A viral debate moment. Sam Seder on Surrounded, the Jubilee show where they bring on individuals of particular political persuasion, surround them by people of the opposing persuasion, and then have them debate a variety of people. I know people love this. I'm not a fan of any of it. I watched a few of them. I don't watch them now because I don't like talking point 5-minute sound bites. I like in-depth conversation. You know, the reason why we don't do Timcast IRL over Zoom is largely because you can't have a raw, honest conversation. Every internet conversation always is just A, then B, then C, then D. Whereas opposed with actual in-person, as you can see with this viral moment where Sam Seder was obliterated by Eleazar Perez, there's an opportunity to interrupt and advance in ways that can get at the core of issues. The only issue I take, for the most part, with Jubilee is they only give the guy a few minutes. What we need is a much longer conversation. And we find something particularly interesting for which I would like to address. The first thing I'd like to say is, for those that have not seen this is Eleazar Perez, who believes in, I would just say, theistic moral foundations as a basis for society. Hope I'm not getting his viewpoint wrong. We had him on Timcast IRL the other night. And Sam Seder, who doesn't have a moral philosophy at all. I am not saying that to insult Sam Seder. Calm down, liberals. There are moral philosophies that you could ask someone, do you ascribe to this belief system, or if none of those, is there an amalgam or something unique? How would you describe it? Sam Seder hasn't one. He doesn't have one. If you were to ask me, I'd say I take a strongly deontological approach, which I say strongly because I don't know that there's an absolute in terms of how we handle morals and ethics in society. I do believe that we can take a look at moral foundations, which largely are overlapping with religions, not completely, but typically. And I would argue that the Christian moral foundation has created a better world than any other moral foundation. Case in point, Sam Seder exists beneath the creations of this Christian moral society. So if you're a liberal who lives in this country and you say, I disagree, Christianity is wrong, congratulations! You are an outpouring of quite literally Christian moral foundation. Now, you may argue that you reject much of its tenets. You don't believe in organized religion. Your ideas and worldview does not exist in communist China or in Islamic Qatar. They don't exist. The worldviews that you've developed, classical liberalism, emerged out of Christian moral tradition. That is the point. Now, you may argue that you have a new moral tradition, something else. And I simply would say, describe that to me, where you view your morals as coming from. They don't have to come from God. I'm not saying that. What is your view? Where should society go? What is the purpose of all that we do? Now, it all stems back to religion, because these are great questions that are difficult to answer. In this viral moment, which I'm going to say it again, guys. The problem with these Jubilee shows, very entertaining. It's not bad. And I know people reluctantly get a lot of views. I don't know that much is served by these snippets, because what we needed between Sam Seder and Eleazar Perez is probably 2 hours. However, I would at least admit this. Sam Seder is not a man who has any intention of actually answering questions or understanding them. So let me say, I'm going to show you the clip from the show where it breaks down the inability of Sam Seder to truly understand. And I will start by saying this. 8 years ago, I think it was 7 years ago. I've known Sam going back to 2012 or whatever. In fact, Sam Seder is the first person to ever in media praise me. When I first got my start during Occupy Wall Street, Sam Seder, famously on his radio show or whatever it was praising I, as well as another guy that I worked with. That was the first time I ever got any recognition in media. So thank you, Sam. Known him since then. And as I have sought to understand, as I always have my whole life, the world around me, I eventually found myself in a position where Sam wasn't actually, as someone I knew, trying to better understand the world as a liberal personality and solve for its problems. Instead, he seems to adhere to moral collectivism, which is what I describe as wokeness. It's one of the easiest ways to understand what wokeness is. Many people try to debate what wokeness is, and I tell you, my view is it is cult-like adherence to liberal orthodoxy. That is to say, moral collectivism. The left has an idea of what they deem to be true and right, and it could change tomorrow. So long as the collective says so, it is. That is a horrifying prospect because it means that actions taken today that are justified by the crowd of the moral collectivist could be condemned tomorrow by the same group. And we've seen it with Sarah Silverman losing a movie role because 15 years ago she did blackface. That is the horrors of moral collectivism, at least in my opinion. Now, before I play this clip, I do want to say one thing. Again, going back about 7 or 8 years, I had a conversation. I don't like saying debate because I'm like, tell me who you are. Sam Seder, at the time, had a famous viral moment. It was both viral on the left and the right for different reasons. One, because the left is a bunch of low IQ individuals who think that anonymous is an actual group that exists. They don't understand the word anonymous means anonymous, but I'm just kind of insulting them at this point. So we were having a discussion about universal health care, to which I said, I suppose the arguments you're making are utilitarian versus deontological moral ethics. To which Sam responded, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that is. I said, okay. How do I explain to a man of lesser knowledge? Guys, calm down. I'm not insulting him. He quite literally did not know a thing I knew. He has less knowledge on the issue than I do. So how do I relate that to him? Well, you notice I often like to use analogies to explain things, try to put people in a circumstance where they might be familiar with that and attach an emotion to it. It's a sales technique. So I said, okay, Thanos, right? Thanos in Avengers Infinity War says, I will wipe out half of the universal population of life so the other half can flourish. That's utilitarianism. It is Spock. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Captain America represents deontological moral ethics, the duty and responsibility of the individual regardless of consequence. We don't trade lives. We must adhere to our moral principles by any means. We do not engage in those tactics. The response from the left was to howl like monkeys banging on the table saying, Tim is so dumb. Why is he talking about Thanos? And those that understood basic high school level moral philosophy and ethics were like, I didn't even need the analogy in the first place. So this moment went viral on two fronts, with the right being, holy crap, Sam Seder doesn't know basic moral philosophy. How old is this guy? How is he a pundit arguing for what is or should not be in civics and law? And he doesn't even know literally philosophy 101. That's not even fair. 101 implies college. And the left said, holy crap. Tim Pool is trying to make weird arguments about the X-Men and Avengers because he can't even address politics. But I think that shows the distinction. By all means, the left wants to hoot and holler. What you need to understand about a man like Sam Seder is he does not understand concepts in moral philosophy. He does not understand greater questions. He is a low-ordered thinker. Again, I'm not trying to insult him, but that is the truth. Let me play the clip for you so you can get some context here. And we have this article from, this is from The Federalist. The era of presuming liberal moral superiority is over. And they go to mention that kids have figured out that America's failing liberal institutions have left them surrounded by a harmful cultural and political order that can't justify itself. Worse off, Gen Z has finally discovered their lives are being ruined by an ethos of gluttony and moral collectivism. Young people who were told it's okay to pull pranks on the internet later found themselves being kicked off sporting teams. You had kids who were told everybody makes jokes online, go ahead and make jokes. And then 5 years later, they were suspended from school because someone found their old posts on Facebook. They were like, but I was just doing what literally everybody else was doing. Welcome to moral collectivism. And you know what they're saying? F you. You told me it was okay, so I said I will do what I see you do, and then you came back and punished me for it. Yeah, communism much, huh? They have the clip in question. Let's take a look. Charlie Kirk says, the dude just obliterated Sam Seder.
Hey. It's nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Okay, so I would like to touch on the religious fundamentalist aspect. Yeah. Are you an atheist?
I'm a Reformed Jew. I don't have a strong belief in the existence of God, but I'm
going to pause real quick and just make sure you guys understand as he's getting started. There are jump cuts. They edit for time. Eleazar pointed out yesterday that he actually stuttered and stammered and paused quite a bit, but they edit it down. There you go. That's why I don't like these Jubilee things.
I don't think that religion in and of itself is bad.
Okay, so what's wrong with religious fundamentalists? So like when you said trans rights and women's rights or something like that?
Well, the problem I have with religious fundamentalists, and really more, I guess it's really theocrats, is that they want to impose their morality that comes from their religion on the rest of us, and I don't. But
morality, from your view, is going to be a preference, right? It's not morality; it's a preference. So morality without a foundation is going to reduce you to a preference.
Well, I have a foundation for my morality.
Which is what?
It's a humanist vision of what basically creates as little suffering as possible for as many people.
Okay, so you're like a consequentialist? Utilitarian?
I don't really bother myself with being a consequentialist or a utilitarian.
It's always...
Oh my God, Sam Seder is so stupid. This dude had almost 10 years to Google utilitarianism. I am gloating, my friends. Look, I talked to this guy 8 years ago. Was it 7 years ago? Whatever. And I asked him if he was a utilitarian or a deontological worldview. And the dude didn't know what it meant. And in all of this time, Sam Seder is so stupid. He didn't Google it. Y'all are getting your morals and worldviews from a guy who's never used Google one time in 7 years to understand a question I asked him? Oh my God. I am embarrassed for people who watch his show. First of all, the guy's got an unhealthy obsession with me, so congratulations, Sam. You're getting, I'm addressing you as you so hope and beg for. That was embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. A humanist vision. Sam doesn't understand at all what morals are, where they come from, why he does the thing he does. If you watch his show, it is literally emotional reaction of moral collectivism, meaning single order thinking, meaning he is an impulsive reactor. As a human being, it is the most reductive, rudimentary structure of human mind. Animals are impulsive, reactionary. Sam, that's all he is. He's never stopped. I can't believe this. I mean, I can. The man in 7 years did not stop one time to consider the root of why he feels the way he does. He cannot look within himself and question his own existence. They do tests where they put monkeys in front of mirrors and put stickers on their forehead. And then they're like, does the monkey recognize that it exists and it's seeing itself? And if the monkey pulls the sticker off, they're like, heavens me, the monkey considered its own existence, but for a fleeting moment. Sam hasn't done that once. Holy crap.
It's going to reduce you to a preference. So if you say that killing is wrong and I say it's right, you would really have no contention with that.
Well, no, I don't base my understanding of civil society on religion. And so we have a civil society. Okay. We have laws that we have decided as a society in a democratic way. And for some people, it's okay for it to be informed by their religion. That's okay.
Okay, perfect. So if tomorrow society comes together and we say, hey, trans folks don't deserve rights, you would be okay with that?
No, I would be against it, but I mean it would be.
It would be morally right under your view.
Not morally right. No. I'm not talking about morals.
Okay,
here.
So here's where I'm getting to, right?
He doesn't know what morals means.
Religious foundations provide an ethical framework for one to live their life off of.
I believe you can have an ethical framework without religion.
And if we take the leftist view to its logical tail end, to its extreme view, you have low reproductive birth rates, you have a reproductive dead end, so two men together can't reproduce unless they have to take from a healthy straight couple. Religion provides this foundation where you do prioritize the nuclear family.
So do you have a problem with gay people being married?
It's not that I have a problem, I just don't see a justification for why they ought to be gay outside of it just feels good. Can you give me another justification for it?
Well, I think maybe that's the way they were born.
Okay, what about pedophiles? Are they born that way?
They may be, yeah.
Okay, so should we let a pedophile off the hook since they were born that way?
No, I think we as a society has decided...
Should implement duties to prevent them from acting on that innate urge, correct?
Well, I think between consenting adults, it's a different thing than...
Okay, so you're okay with a 45-year-old dad with a 19-year-old daughter as well? Incest?
No.
If they consent, you're okay with that?
No, I think society has also determined that it's not beneficial.
Right, there's duties and obligations that we have, so religion provides...
Not beneficial. Listen, these are questions that I asked myself when I was 16 years old. I grew up Catholic. I felt that the school and the church that I went to provided with no answers, but there were so many assertions that they had made. And I sought those answers. First, becoming an atheist for probably 4 or 5 years. But I don't know if I was actually ever an atheist because I didn't really understand much. And then around 18, a formative moment, I said, I think I understand there is a God. And I've talked quite a bit about this. But when he says society has determined, or that there's no benefit to incest, he's starting to understand obligation and duties as if he just seeing a crack in the bottom of the door. What Eleazar is pointing out, what does a gay couple accomplish? They can't have kids unless they use surrogacy. The things the left prescribes and says is morally good results in a dead end, socially, culturally, and biologically.
Provides those duties. Life isn't about freedom and exercising what you want.
I mean, well, you want to impose your religious doctrine on me, and I don't want that.
You just admitted we need duties. We have responsibility as a society to keep us functioning, to keep us thriving. Your leftist view, the liberal view, doesn't provide anything besides it just makes me feel good. Religion does. So what's your argument?
And he is completely correct. Eleazar says, why not then a 45-year-old dad with his 19-year-old daughter? And he says, no, society finds that it is not beneficial. Okay, if it's not beneficial to society, not even a detriment to society, Sam Seder argued against it. What we're really seeing is Sam has never even thought about these things. In fact, in an interview he gave to Vulture, they actually asked him to address this. Now, to all of my friends who are devout Christian religious folks, I think you are missing the secular, philosophical, classically liberal or otherwise angle to this. And when it's approached as saying, Sam doesn't understand Christianity fundamentally, blah, 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 he is simply using that, going to his audience saying, see, they want to impose their religion. It's a meaningless nonsense statement because anybody who understands moral philosophy knows that religion is just a faith-based moral structure, a moral tradition, we call it. And there are other non-theistic moral traditions, and there are today, as we have seen, the non-theistic religion, we call it, of wokeness. That is, social orthodoxy of the liberals, the moral collective, what they deem to be correct. It exists outside of conservatives, the right, because the right has a Christian moral framework. The emergence of the culture war, in my view, has many factors within it. Some people, as we often mention, it's libertarian, authoritarian, it's nationalist, it's globalist, whatever. I don't know that anyone actually describes it. But I would say it is the Christian moral framework versus a neo-secularist, or whatever you want to call it, an emergent moral framework that has no nucleus. I'll explain a little bit more and give a breakdown, but let me read this passage from the interview Sam did following his Jubilee interview. They write, or I say, they asked Sam, what went through your mind when you came to the realization, what went through your mind? You came to the realization that what was what was happening. Come on, guy. Because you had to juggle that alongside debating people simply believed in objectively false statements. Okay, I think there's a lot of typos in that question, but I'm not surprised coming from Vulture. Sam says it was exhausting, and the people they cut out were even more, shall we say, off topic. With the people who don't know the facts, I knew it was going to be helpful just to impeach their perspective. With the theocrat and the white nationalist, I felt like I didn't have to do much of the work here. I'm going to let them espouse their agenda and allow the audience to decide if that's the vision of America they want. And there it is. When you don't understand why you exist, like a dog, right? I like dogs. Dogs are great. I'm not insulting someone by saying, like, I'm saying dogs also don't contemplate their existence for the most part, as much as we can tell. You only have a reaction of, don't make me do a thing me no like. Me no like, me growl. Ah. Whereas human beings, or I should say those of higher ordered thinking, would say, why do I do what I do? Why do I exist? For what is the purpose of life? What is the function of life? What does life do? Is it math? Is the logos of the universe? Does it dictate? Do we have free will? I must ask these questions and understand these deep, philosophical questions. Sam Seder can't do that. He lacks the perspicacity. So he simply says, I'm going to let them do the work. Okay, well, Eleazar asked for what is the purpose of society? Well, as much as Sam doesn't know that, he can only parrot things he may have heard on the TV. So he says things like, when it comes to incest, it's not beneficial to society, or society has determined. But the question is, why does society determine? Evolutionary psychology plays a huge role in the functions of human beings, and biology does as well. And as Eleazar points out, certainly there will be deviations in a society. I believe the existence of liberalism, as we colloquially call it today, despite the fact that it's not really liberalism, exists as a function of mutation of psychology. Evolutionary psychology would suggest there needs to be strong deviation in any biological entity and structure and society. This is mutation. I would argue that the leftist orthodoxy is a mutation. Now, sometimes mutations are beneficial and sometimes they're not. An organism that mutates in such a way that causes it problems, like it only has one leg, won't survive. But eventually there's a mutation that becomes beneficial. These allow for leaps in evolution. Eventually, a creature has, instead of flippers, little bony nubs. But now it can actually move itself slightly off of the shore. Whereas fish before would get stuck, beached, and die. This one mutant might not swim very well. But when it goes to the shore, it's able to actually go along the water. And when the water recedes, it doesn't die right away because it can flop itself back into the water. That's a mutation that seemingly would be detrimental, but ultimately is beneficial. As with leftism, we see a mutation from society, the traditional Christian moral ethos, and we are left with something that likely will not survive. They're not having children. They're not producing. They're not reproducing. It is not constructive. It does not advance societal knowledge or scientific knowledge. In the end, it is a bunch of people who simply flock together like a murmuration of birds without rhyme or reason. That is what Sam Seder represents. I don't fault him for not having the cognitive capabilities to Google search things like solipsism or deontology, or even to look up the root words of such things. If you can't do it and your brain doesn't work that way, some people just won't have that ability. Some people are going to be smarter. Some people are going to be more arrogant, but twice as stupid. Sam Seder goes on. With a theocrat, it took me a while to understand what he was actually saying in terms of what he was probably probably espousing a society where women are subjugated by men, where trans people don't exist, where marriage rights are not extended to anyone but heterosexual couples. If I had to do it again, I would have attempted to realize that first and then just let him espouse how he envisions America instead of fighting him so hard. Because from my perspective, I do think there's a majority of people in this country and even a significant chunk of Trump voters who don't want that. This is ultimately as I described. His only reaction is, let the man actually describe his positions, for I have no answer to them. And people don't like what he say. Well, I got to tell you, those of duty, those who built the modern world, and this goes to any moral tradition, communist China, for instance. There are those who are willing to make sacrifices that others are not. Some of these are, I would describe as evil, but in some cultures, they don't think so. You know, the Soviets and the communists in China, they'd massacre tens of millions. The Nazis would murder millions. Why? Because they have a psychotic and deranged worldview where they think it is okay to destroy so many. I don't agree. My morals are built off of a combination of Christian moral tradition, though I'm not a Christian, but I've seen the logos, the logic in what it has produced. And then I take a look to science and our basic understanding of physics. And I say, well, there's a reason why we protect life at all costs, or to the best of our ability, though it's not so nuanced. And that is, life is negative entropy. This is what life does. Life creates, life organizes. Now it organizes in combat to entropy, which destroys, on the path to pure order. It certainly is a paradoxical universe, is it not? The heat death of the universe would be perfect order, every electron, every particle equally spaced out across an endless cosmos. But in the meantime, it is disarray. Entropy simply destroys what exists before us, and entropy, life, negative entropy, the coming together of mass and matter, resists, though only in the context that more entropy is created. Truly, a remarkable structure. They want to say, but isn't that a risky thing to do? To sit back and say, I'll let them hang themselves? Because we do have a resulting situation where clips from this video then go out into the internet and right-wing commentators like Matt Walsh say, look at this guy destroying Sam Seder. And here I am. My point with all of this, though, is to point out to so many young people, do not abide by a man who has not thought these questions, for he will lead you to the path of ruin. You will suffer, you will be lost, and you will find yourself old questioning what you have done with your life. The man who comes before you and says, do push-ups, get fit, be healthy, take care of your legs, take care of your arms, take care of your teeth, they will bestow upon you a better life. You will find yourself at 30 years old with a beautiful family, with a smile on your face, with health and abundance. For which would you prefer? Would you prefer loneliness, squalor, listlessness? I don't know who would. But perhaps to many of these people, they'd much prefer just to do drugs and stimulate themselves to death. Well, here we go. Seder responds, because this guy did, to use your words, hang himself. And when Matt Walsh or Michael Knowles or any of these commentators embrace that guy, it exposes them. Chris Rufo tweeted out that I don't know about Foucault, or I don't know how to address Christian apologia. And from my perspective, I don't care. He's making this academic argument when my argument is, what are the implications of this? They may think amongst themselves they have a rational explanation for why the Bible should supplant the Constitution, but I'm betting the majority of the public who watch these things don't want to live in a world where gay people are ostracized or women are subjugated. That's my calculation. And now he's playing a game for which he's trying to adapt the situation to apply to those who can't understand it. Well, I will say to those that are responding saying, he doesn't understand Christianity. I don't care. I don't care about the religion question or the religion. I care about the philosophy. Sam kept saying, I don't want you to impose your religion. Okay, fine. Me, I don't have one. I don't follow a Christian theistic tradition. I do believe, as I've long said in the Christian moral tradition, which has informed the Constitution, Blackstone's formulation, etc., being one of the best examples. My argument to Sam is, where do you get your morals from? He doesn't know. That's what Eleazar asked as well. It would just be a preference. He simply says, society dictates. But society dictates wrong sometimes. We know this is a fact. Racism persisted for a long time. So why would Sam Seder say society has determined it's of no benefit? During the period of slavery, society determined that slavery had a benefit. And then certain technologies and social innovations and revolutions occurred in which the structures fell apart. So no, society saying something is or is not beneficial does not dictate whether something should or should not be moral. But I don't disagree in a certain sense that Sam Seder is right. Society has largely functioned that way for a long time. It is only those of strong moral conviction who've resisted, which has made these changes. He says, in any case, people like Matt Walsh work to obfuscate the things that are at the heart of the political agenda. And by embracing somebody who is so explicit about it, it should cause their audience to realize what is at the heart of their agenda. I haven't spent too much time noodling around, but somebody sent me Michael Knowles' video response. And looking through his comment section on YouTube, there are people saying, what are you talking about? Which is, for me, is the goal I had going into this. You might not peel off the majority of his audience. You might not even peel out a substantial chunk. But if you get some percentage of people greater than 0% to look at this guy with more jaundiced eye, you might amount to something. I completely agree, Sam, which is why I'm making this video. My question to all of you who watch this guy, is a man who does not seek to understand the world around him, is he a man you would seek to emulate? Sam Seder had 7 years to Google search deontology or utilitarianism, and he didn't. He had no interest in understanding the world around him. Now, for many of you, you may simply say, why should I care? Perhaps you're a nihilist. By all means. An agent of entropy is so you choose to be, for we have free will. Okay, do so with my blessing. If you want to be Chelsea Handler, where you wake up at 50 some odd years old at 6 a.m, to do drugs and masturbate, by all means, that's your prerogative. But I will leave you with this. Ask yourself of the world that Sam Seder has provided for you. He doesn't understand the deep moral and philosophical questions. He doesn't understand the nature of science and the world around him. He simply says, society dictates. Does society dictate a world in which you will achieve your dreams and accomplish what you want? Maybe for some of you it does. But for many people, there are deeper questions. And the question will be, as you lie there on your deathbed, reminiscing, and reliving your past experiences, what will you think to yourself? There are many sayings in this regard. People say, no one on their deathbed ever said, I wish I worked more. They tend to say things like, I wish I had more family or I spent more time with my kids. Why does that trope exist? For these people that tell you, a society in which people don't have children, women are in the workplace instead of raising families. I'm not saying all women should be raising families. Women are. I'm not a Christian theist who believes women should be at home. I'm saying in that world where men and women are not enjoying traditional lives, with freedoms, of course, What is the end result? So I ask you this, to look at yourself. For those of you that are, I don't know, I would say out of shape, do you feel good about it? For those of you that have not accomplished your goals, do you feel good about it? Don't give me this, how dare you. Genuinely look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, what do I want and why am I here? Are you happy that you're overweight, or are you just making excuses? Are you the fox who couldn't reach the grapes? Who wants the grapes anyway? They're probably sour. Are you lying to yourself? Perhaps some of you aren't. Perhaps you're like, I genuinely do not care. Okay, that's totally fine. My question is for those who think long-term and want to understand what is the point of being alive. How many of you have given up and said there clearly is no purpose, there is no point? Some of you have looked at those of religious faith and said, you poor, poor souls. You've simply ascribed a belief structure to yourselves because you're so desperate for purpose. But this is what I find in nihilism. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. While so many people say, if nothing matters, I can do, then what's the point of doing anything? I say quite the inverse. If nothing matters, what's stopping you from doing whatever you want? The rules, the laws, the structures? Well, certainly if you want to do evil, good luck. I recommend not. But for anybody else out there who says, I want to climb the top of I want to climb Everest. I want to base jump the tallest building. I want to be the greatest there ever was. I want to catch all the Pokemon, whatever it is. What's stopping you? If nothing matters, what's holding you back? People like Sam Seder don't ask these deep questions. And the evidence is in the fact that the man still, after nearly a decade, cannot answer a basic question of whether he's a consequentialist or has a deontological framework. Does he believe in duty? Apparently he does sometimes, but he really doesn't understand these questions because he's never actually cared to read it. Why follow a guy who doesn't care in the first place? Is he going to provide for you a path towards a better life? So I say this. I want you to think right now about what you will do as you lie injured in the hospital awaiting death. Imagine this. I want you to actually imagine this. You are lying in a hospital room. You are alone. Your heart is racing, and you don't know if you're going to live or die. I want you to imagine that. Because for those who have the ability to empathize and try to, empathy, of course, trying to imagine what someone else may be feeling, it is a horrifying scenario. For those of you that actually have been in a hospital alone with no one to call, you know exactly what this is. It is torture, it's hell, it is terrifying. Now imagine yourself at 75 years old. You're sitting in a hospital bed, the lights are low, sun is coming through the windows, and a doctor enters the room and says, I'm sorry, but it is terminal. Is there someone you'd like me to call? No. Well, press the button if you need us, and they walk out of the room. How will that feel? I wonder. I'd also like you to imagine that feeling you got when Grandma made you a batch of chocolate chip cookies, if she did. I never had anything like that, but some people did. I want you to imagine what it was like when you got into trouble and your parents came and rescued you. I want you to imagine any warm feeling you have of family. And now imagine you are lying there in bed, dying. And the doctor says, I'm sorry, it's terminal. I'm going to send in your family if it's all right now. And in come your brothers, your sisters, your children, your grandchildren, and they look you in the eyes and say, I love you, and you have given me the greatest life anyone could ever have hoped for. Thank you so much for everything. One moral worldview prescribes that scenario, and another prescribes the latter. The former. Do you want to be lying in bed terrified, thinking that nothing matters? Perhaps there's some that would argue, but it's relief. There's nothing to fear if nothing matters. But I know, and you know, that you will be terrified. Because as they say, there's no atheists in a foxhole. Now, why is that? Now, some atheists argue, that's ridiculous, how dare you? Because it's not absolute, but it is an interesting question. Why is it that even in our darkest moments, those of us who don't believe are still willing to at least entertain the possibility? Because we're scared and we want help. We're social beings. And even if there is no God, we want someone to come and help us. So even then, everyone knows, for all humans, it's preferable to be lying there when your family comes in to hold your hand and say thank you. Because you know you're leaving, but you know you've done your best. And it feels good. And you know what the truth is? If it didn't feel good, humans would not exist. Humanity exists and perseveres because we strive for these feelings. We fight every day for family, and that's why we value them. If we didn't, we would just go extinct. And that is the moral worldview of Sam Seder. That's what he gives you. He doesn't know why he thinks the things he does. It just feels good. That's the world he wants to live in. And these people will grow old, and some will have different degrees of family. Not saying everyone's going to be barren and alone. Even gay couples can have kids to varying degrees, not with each other, of course, but there are ways they can have biological children through surrogacy and things like this. So it's not absolute that you're just there by yourself dying, but you certainly will not have the apex of what humans have fought so much for. The last thing I'll give you is this. People like Sam Seder genuinely can't understand orders of thinking. And that is, I recommend you look up these various, research papers on the orders of thinking. Reactionary and impulsive individuals. They don't care to think deeply. They don't know why they think what they do. Non-player characters, I guess. I can give you a rudimentary exercise in helping you be a stronger and better person and smarter person. Not everybody can be the smartest person because there are limitations on our biology. That's just who we are. But the first thing you should recognize is this. In any situation, you should be cognizant of the first person. How do I feel about this? Genuinely ask yourself that. It's remarkable to say that people like Sam do not. They don't ask themselves these questions. And it seems so simple. You're sitting across the table on a date, and you think to yourself, how do I feel right now? Because so many people lie to themselves, and that's how they find themselves in jobs and lives they do not like. And then one day they wake up and say, I hate this, I'm miserable. Well, did you ever stop to think about what you really felt in any of these moments? Or were you on autopilot? The next thing you must entertain is the second person. So this is twofold. The person sitting across from you, how must they feel? How do you think they feel about the actions you take? And are you acting in such a way that would be a warm feeling, a negative feeling? Did you ever stop to think about how you act and what they want? Simple, right? Outside of this, additionally, is the people sitting around you, because it's not just two people. The second person is the people around you and their experiences. It's not just the person sitting across from you, but the person you don't know at the other table looking at you. What are they thinking? Why do they think the things they do? What must they want or feel? Not the most important questions in the immediate, but important nonetheless that you stop to consider these things. Simple reason could be maybe that's a burglar and he's going to rob the liquor store. Were you paying attention to what he was doing and how he was behaving? Do you ever ask yourself these questions? And lastly is the third person. In the grand scheme of things, as you sit there talking to this individual, how does it play in to the greater of human society and existence? You should be aware of these things. Maybe you're like, I don't even know how to begin to think that stuff. That's fine. Do you? But I tell you, these are the basic questions you can ask yourself to elevate yourself beyond first-ordered thinking, so you don't end up like a vapid ignoramus like Sam Seder, who after a decade couldn't Google search a single philosophical concept, such as consequentialism. Do you want to live in a world where a man comes to you and says, you are to be sacrificed and don't matter? Or do you want to live in a world where a man says, I don't know you, but it is my duty to save you? I think it's fairly obvious. And then you'll ask yourself, why does this man behave this way? Why does he want what he wants? For people who would say you must be sacrificed for the greater good, what they want is rooted in ignorance and a lack of understanding in humanity, civilization, or otherwise. Hence, you get authoritarian despots who don't succeed. It's why the centralized command economies don't work. And those who are duty-bound to build a better world are those who would plant the trees whose shade they know they will never sit beneath. So to my friends Thank you for listening to this rant, I suppose. There's a lot more to break down in this regard. But I appreciate that Sam Seder went and did this show because he exposes himself. He likes to think that the other people expose themselves. And, to an extent, most do. I got to tell you, to all the Christians, when your response is that he doesn't understand Christianity, he's not speaking to people who care about Christianity. He's speaking to people who have a hatred in their hearts and a lack of understanding of moral philosophy. He's trying to rally the NPCs. Now, the man himself doesn't understand these questions, but I suppose he doesn't need to. He's not the only one. This is why we have Trump derangement syndrome and Elon derangement syndrome. People do not ever stop, for the most part, to ask themselves what someone else must be thinking and why. I can tell you this. That's why I had a debate with Sam Seder and brought him back on the show to ask him these questions. And you find when you ask him these questions and you truly try to wonder what it is he thinks, there's two potential scenarios. He's intentionally playing the fool, or he genuinely doesn't have the mental capacity. So I'll end by saying this once again. You choose. I'm sure it feels really good to do drugs and party and wake up late and masturbate. Is that the world you want to live in, and how long will that last for? But ultimately, you decide. Short-term gain, long-term loss, long-term gain, short-term loss, short-term sacrifice, long-term success. It's up to you. Thanks for listening to this, what is effectively a podcast anyway. I'm going to wrap it there. Smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know, and more segments to come.